what do you do when the spouse isn't on the demo? AKA, how do you close? What can you do on the demo when you notice that Mr. or Mrs. Jones is not on the demo? What do you kind of tweak to play in your favor as you're going through the presentation? That's what you're going to learn in this next video. So it is, what do you do when the spouse is not on the appointment? How do you close? Hashtag Eileen. How do you close when the spouse is not on the appointment? All right, so for this one, I got 10 fire tips for you. 10 easy, 10 easy applicable fire tips. Because inevitably, we've all experienced this. We've all experienced this over the last week. I've gotten so many calls of people that are like, she wants to get the homemaker, but she has to talk to her husband. If that is the issue, I've got a couple things that you can do to hopefully help the situation a little bit. All right, so key number one, what do you do when the spouse isn't on the demo? Key number one is, on the phone call, stress the importance of the spouse being there. I'm going to start off with that key because some of us don't stress it enough, and that's a big reason why the husband isn't on the appointment. So on the phone call, stress the importance of the spouse being there. There's a line in the script, hopefully we've all seen it, where it says, hey, can you please make sure your spouse is there? It's in the beginner's script that you learned during training, but I don't think it's in the recommendation script. So if it's not, you got to add it in there. So make sure that you emphasize, hey, can you please make sure your husband or your wife is going to be there? Now, an added bonus line that I would say, because I've used this before, is I get double credit for doing the appointment for both of you. I get double credit, and you could even handle the objection before it comes up. Hey, Brian, I know that you're probably not a big fan of cooking. Maybe you are, but since it is going to be a lot to do with like the kitchen and stuff like that, can you please make sure that your wife's there just so I can get opinion on my presentation from both of you? And on top of it, I get double credit for seeing you both for my scholarship or for my contest, right? So you have to handle that objection, hopefully before it. I get double credit for seeing you. Our CSPs, our co-sales professionals, they say, hey, I get paid double for the appointment for seeing you, because they get paid 3 times the amount off of commission when they're both on the appointment. So you technically do get paid double as well when you see both the husband and the wife together, okay? So one thing that you can really, really try to get into the habit of doing is stressing over the phone, hey, I get paid double credit for seeing you both on the appointment. Key number 2 is build very genuine rapport with the spouse that's there. Get to know them on the front end in the appointment. Be vulnerable about what you're doing. Sometimes we get so caught up in just diving into the script that we don't spend time getting to know the person. What do they do for a living? How many kids do they have? What types of knives do they already have? What have you found out before the demo even started what kind of knives they already had? So you're not wondering midway through the demo, oh, do they already have Cutco? I never asked. So build that type of rapport early on, so that way you can figure out exactly who they are, what are their hobbies, have they gone on a lot of vacations recently? You want to be a lot of staycations. You want to be, and I heard this in a Vector Connect audio, you want to be the niece or nephew they've never had. That's the mentality. You don't walk in and say, well, it's a great weather we're having there, Auntie. Yeah, your lawn looks great today, Auntie. Like, you don't act awkward in front of your aunt or your mom or your grandmother. But why are we acting awkward in front of Mrs. Jones? You gotta be the go-lucky, motivated, positive person You got to have that mentality early on, and I'm going to talk about why here in a moment. So you have to build genuine rapport first, especially if it's just one of the spouses there. Because keep in mind, people get bought into who we are and what we're doing. So it's easier for Mrs. Jones to justify making a sale if Nicole is super motivated, super gun-ho. I've heard this many times where my customers say, well, honey, I needed to buy because Nicole is in a really big contest, and I really needed to help her out just so she can graduate debt-free. So they justify purchases when you build that genuine relationship with them, believe it or not. So that's why the rapport side is so important when you're seeing just one of the spouses. And then key number 3 is asking a bold question. And I'm going to give you the question. Key number 3 is asking a bold question. And this happens right after rapport. This happens right after rapport. Here's the bold question. If you end up finding something you like today, would you be able to make the financial decision today without your spouse here? So you have to ask this question after you've built a relationship with her for 5 to 10 minutes minimum. So, hey, Mrs. Jones, you've been such a sweetheart. I've really loved getting to know you. I have one quick question for you. So, hey, if you were to end up finding something that you really, really like today, would you be able to make that final decision today without your spouse being here? If she says, oh, for sure, yeah, no, I buy whatever I want, then you proceed with the presentation. If she goes, oh, big purchases, I got to run by the spouse. Then you go, cool, let's go ahead and reschedule for a time that works best for both you and your husband, so we can try to figure out, which day would work better for all of us to do it. Besides, I get paid double credit for seeing you both. Next key is have goals with deadlines. Have goals with deadlines. What I mean by that is whenever I share my goals, I always talk about how, Mrs. Jones, my deadline ends on Monday. Every single presentation. It might be a Sunday night demo that I'm doing. I say, hey, Mrs. Jones, my deadline for this goal for me to hit 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 for the week ends tomorrow. It's big for my scholarship race. So, and I always end with a deadline. So that way when I'm closing and I'm asking for the order at the homemaker set, I reiterate how my goal ends on Monday. So she's going to get the best deals today if she decides to purchase. People like to get the best deals possible, but when they remember, oh, so-and-so is on a deadline, Ty's on a deadline that ends on Monday, then there's a reason why they should get it today, not later. And I had a customer that was like, oh, Bri, I can't do this $600 purchase today. I got a lot of bills to pay. And I said, oh, for sure, Mrs. Jones, totally get it. It's all good. If it's all right, I'm going to go through and kind of show you some of the other options, just because my goal and my deadline that I talked about earlier ends tomorrow. So I'm going to see what options might work better for you. Then she goes, oh, I forgot that your goal ends tomorrow. Let's just do it today. And she got the $600 package just because I said my goal ends tomorrow. She justified it. She's like, well, your goal ends tomorrow. Might as well. Yeah. Right? Deadlines. Deadlines are so vital, so important in any type of sales company. Next is handle the objection before it comes up. Handle the objection before it comes up. How do you do that? How do you handle the objection before it comes up? Is by stressing the forever guarantee. Right after the video is done talking about our forever guarantee, if I were you, I would go through the 4 points again. Hey, Mrs. Jones, let me real fast. This is like our signature point in the video that I want to just real fast review again in case you missed it. But our guarantee has 4 basic points. Number 1 is the forever performance. So if anything ever chips, cracks, breaks, fades, stains, we replace it for free. It could happen in a week of having the product, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. We will guarantee that we will fix it or replace it for free. Number 2 is the forever sharpness. The next one is the misuse or abuse clause. So if you decide to chop down a tree branch with a knife, we'll go ahead and replace it for half off. And then the last, most important one for you today, Mrs. Jones, is the 15-day trial. Mrs. Jones, let me tell you right now, the 15-day trial is the most important thing for people that have never purchased Cutco before, and here's why. And then you dive into a third-party story. So you always need to have a third-party story in your back pocket. The third-party story was a personal one of mine where I literally told my customer, because the customer wanted to buy a homemaker. She goes, oh, I can't make purchases without talking to my husband. So I said, cool, can you call him while he's at work so that way we can try to figure this out right now? So she called her husband right in front of me and said, hey, honey, can I spend $1,300 today? And I looked at her and I said, oh, no, you weren't supposed to say that. Honey, can I spend $1,300 today on knives? What do you think he said? She walked out of the room. I don't know what he said, but he said something, okay? And so I reiterate that story. I go, oh, Mrs. Jones, here's the thing. The reason why we have this 15-day trials is because Cutco wants to make sure that you get 3 weeks, because it's 15 business days, so 3 weeks, especially now with COVID. The company actually gives closer to 6 weeks to try everything out. With your husband, because I literally had a customer a couple months ago that called her husband right in front of me and was like, hey, can I buy like a lot of knives for a lot of money? And he said no. And she just goes, okay, sounds good. And then she wasn't able to try it out because she didn't experience the 15-day trial. Versus I've had other customers that just give it a shot for 15 days and they really fall in love and they call me back later for more Cutco. So this is why we have the 15-day trial. So that third party story needs to happen if the husband or the wife isn't on the appointment. You have to plant that seed early on, because now she's going to be thinking of, oh, well, what if that's me? And I have to talk to my husband about it. Oh, I might have to just rely on that 15-day trial. So you're handling that objection of the husband not being there before it comes up. The next key is third party stories. Third party stories. So you want to nail that, just like I talked about with the objection, handling the objection before it comes up. Key number 7 is when you're closing, stress the 5 pay, especially if the wife isn't there or the husband isn't there. Stress the 5 pay option when you're closing. Throw a lot of additional one-liners that allow her to feel at ease about the 5-month payment plan. Because remember, when you're confident, she's confident. That's why we do the whole nod and smile, because you're totally confident. Yeah, it's no big deal. $1,300 or $289, whatever's easier for you, Mrs. Jones. She feeds off that confidence. Because if she's like weary, like, oh, what am I supposed to say to my husband? But we've got Shayla just like, yeah, you want to get this set today? Get your free gifts? Cool. If an 18-year-old's this comfortable saying $289 is not that big of a deal, she feels a lot more comfortable. Remember, she feeds off your confidence. So when you're stressing the 5-pay option, throw one-liners like, oh, Mrs. Jones, yeah, $289, $229 per month. That's pretty much how much the average American spends on cable. So it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, so that's how much you're going to write down, Mrs. Jones. And on a week-to-week basis, that's, literally how much you spend probably on a date night. Yeah, probably like how much you spend on a date night. So it's not that big of a deal either, And you just go with it. Because again, when you're saying these one-liners, like when I talk about the 5 pay on a galley set or a starter set, I reiterate how, yeah, Mrs. Jones, this is how much I spend at Chick-fil-A on a week-to-week basis. So if the average college student can spend this much, it's really not a lot. But again, you're invoking that confidence when you're stressing the 5 pay and you're breaking it down. It's whenever I talk about $289, $229, that's like the average grocery bill for the average American, Mrs. Jones.
Just for a week.
Yep.
It's an average Costco bill that you go to every month.
Yeah, Costco bill, right? Like you got to say these things like it's no big deal. It's confidence. That's what I'm trying to get at. Next one is to drop down slowly. Next one is to cheaper than exactly. It's cheaper than a Costco bill. Mrs. Jones, you got to go for the ultimate. This is cheaper than a Costco bill. Drop down slowly. So don't jump into set and assume that it's too much. Take your time, ask clarifying questions as you're going through each option. When you go too fast, any ounce of confusion loses a sale. Any ounce of confusion loses a sale. So when you're going so fast because you're nervous, guess what? She's losing everything that you're saying. All the value that you built for 45 minutes is being lost due to the fact that you're just nervous trying to speed through the end. You got to take your time. This is like go time. This is baby steps here. So you want to make sure that you're dropping down slowly, writing down prices. And next one is stress the buy now bonus. Stress the buy now bonus. So let's say you're doing all these things. Let's say you're going through it all, but you finally have to get down and resort to the buy now bonus. Utilize that buy now bonus, the reserve buy now bonus. And last but not least, if the spouse isn't there when you're doing the demonstration, your last resort, if she really does want to buy, but she really, really needs to talk to her husband, the last thing that you can suggest at the very end of the presentation is to redo the demo with the husband within the next 48 hours. That's the last case. Like, you tried everything at this point and you're just like, all right, I did everything Bri just taught, did not work. The last thing that you can do, your saving grace, is to redo the demo within 48 hours. You can't wait a week. By then, the value is gone. So if you do it within a 48-hour window and you actually schedule the appointment with the wife, you say, hey, he needs to be here for this next appointment that I'm going to redo, then that's the last resort that you can do if the husband or the wife isn't there. Cool. So those are your key easy steps in reassuring that that you make the most out of someone that needs their spouse there but is not there, of course.